He just wanted to rest in bed, but the alien girls had other plans for the human soldier. The twin suns of Vareth burned low on the horizon, their red and white light colliding across the rugged plain like opposing breaths. The heat shimmered off the cracked surface of the road that led toward Outpost 11, a half-forgotten border settlement where the sound of engines had long been replaced by the whisper of sand and the hum of old machinery. Captain Rowan Hale, once a soldier of the Terran Peace Corps, now a man merely trying to rest, trudged along the edge of that road with exhaustion in his every step. His armor plates were scratched and faded, his weapon slung carelessly across his back. He had been discharged 6 months ago after the war ended, but the silence of peace still felt heavier than battle ever had. He was supposed to be on leave, supposed to be in a cot somewhere, staring at the ceiling and pretending the ghost didn't whisper. But when the transport shuttle broke down 20 clicks outside the settlement, he'd started walking, hoping to find a place to sleep before the second sun dipped beneath the dunes. That was when he saw her. At first, Rowan thought she was some kind of mirage. A tiny blue figure sitting by the roadside, her knees drawn to her chest, her head buried between them. But as he approached, the image stayed. A child, alone. Her skin shimmered a soft, bright azure beneath the failing light, like moonlight caught in water. She was barefoot, her small hands gripping a stuffed toy made from alien fibercloth, its head drooping where a seam had split. Rowan slowed, the soldier in him calculating threats even as the man in him recognized pain. He scanned the area. No hovercrafts, no vehicles, no adults nearby, just wind. He took a few steps closer, boots crunching against the hard soil. The girl flinched at the sound. "Hey," he said softly. His voice, deep and rough from years of shouting over gunfire, came out gentler than he expected. "You lost, kid?" The girl looked up, her eyes enormous and bright against her blue skin. They were the color of summer storms, gray and endless. She didn't answer, just clutched her toy tighter. Rowan could see that she'd been crying. Her cheeks were streaked with dust and salt. He crouched down slowly, unhooking the canteen from his belt. "You need some water?" She hesitated, then nodded once, her small throat bobbing. He handed it over carefully, letting her take it herself. She drank too fast, coughing after the first few gulps. He waited until she steadied. "Easy there. Not too much at once." "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling, but clear. The sound startled him. Her accent had that melodic tone the Varethi were known for, soft but sharp at the edges. "What's your name?" he asked. "Sarah." "I'm Rowan. You out here with somebody, Sarah? Your family?" The child looked down at her toy, running her fingers over its torn seam. "She left," she said quietly. Rowan frowned. "Who did?" "My stepmother. She said I wasn't her problem anymore." He felt something twist in his chest, a slow, painful recognition. He'd seen orphans before, whole camps of them after the war, but there was something different about this one. She wasn't just abandoned, she was discarded. "When did she leave you here?" Sarah pointed toward the sky where the larger sun hung low. "When it was up there." That meant hours ago. She must have been sitting out here through the worst of the heat. Rowan looked at her small feet, raw from the rough ground, and the tattered hem of her dress. "You've been sitting here this whole time?" She nodded. "You got any family in Outpost 11? Another headshake. He sighed. The old fatigue pressed against him again, but this time it wasn't from walking. It was the fatigue that came from knowing what needed to be done. He couldn't just leave her there. He'd seen too many small bodies buried in too many makeshift graves. "All right," he said. "You can't stay out here. It gets cold at night, and worse things than cold start wandering after dark." Her eyes widened. "Worse things?" "Hungry things," he said simply, then softened. "But don't worry. You'll be safe with me, all right?" Sarah clutched her toy tighter. "You're human. Last I checked. They say humans are dangerous." Rowan gave a tired half-smile. "Sometimes they're right, but I'm too tired to be dangerous tonight." The smallest flicker of a smile ghosted across her lips. "You can come with me," he said, extending a hand. "We'll find you something to eat." "Someplace warm to sleep," Sarah hesitated, staring at his outstretched hand. calloused, scarred, the kind of hand that could crush or cradle. Then she put her small blue fingers in his, and the decision was made. The outpost came into view an hour later, a patchwork of rusted dwellings built from recycled dropship panels in alien stone. Rowan's quarters were on the fringe, a low prefab shelter half buried in sand. Inside, it was barely more than a bunk, a table, and a power core that hummed when it felt like it. But it was safe. He helped Sarah inside and watched as she gazed around, her wide eyes drinking in every detail. "You live here?" she asked. "When I'm not sleeping in a trench, yeah. It's small." "You say that like it's a bad thing." He grabbed an old ration pack and tore it open. The smell of heated protein filled the air. "You eat meat?" Sarah shrugged. "Sometimes." "Good enough." He placed the plate in front of her and slid a cup of water across the table. She ate slowly, careful and polite, like she thought she might be scolded for it. Rowan sat opposite her, leaning back with a long exhale. For the first time all day, his body began to unclench. He almost didn't hear the knock at first. 3 sharp raps against metal. He frowned, rising silently. Visitors weren't common out here, especially not after sunset. He unlatched the door. Standing outside was an alien woman, tall, graceful, her skin the same brilliant blue as Sarah's, but luminescent in the dim light. Her eyes glowed faintly, the hue of polished silver. She wore a cloak lined with insignias of the Verethi governance, the kind reserved for those with authority. "You are the human soldier called Rowan Hale?" she asked, her voice smooth as glass. "Used to be," he said cautiously. "Who's asking?" "My name is Tyra Vale. I'm with the Department of Human Alliance Affairs." Her gaze flicked past him into the small shelter, landing on Sarah. The faintest sigh escaped her lips. "You found her." Rowan stepped aside, but his tone stayed guarded. "You know her?" Tara entered slowly, her presence filling the tiny space. "She was reported missing this morning. Her stepmother claims she ran away." "That's not what the kid says." "I believe the child." Tara knelt in front of Sarah, her posture both formal and tender. "Are you hurt, little one?" Sarah shook her head, tears starting to form again. "She left me," she whispered. "She said I was bad luck." Tara's eyes hardened. "The superstition of the lower sectors," she murmured. "I thought we had moved past such ignorance." Rowan crossed his arms. "What happens to her now?" "By law, she must be taken to the Verethi Guardianship Council. They will determine her placement." "Meaning a group home," Rowan said flatly. Tara's eyes lifted to meet his. "It is our process." "Your process sounds a lot like losing another family." The silence between them stretched. Then unexpectedly, Tara sighed. "I agree. But there are protocols." Rowan studied her. For someone trained in diplomacy, she looked tired, like she'd been fighting the system she represented for far too long. He recognized that look. He'd seen it in mirrors after every campaign. "Then bend the protocols," he said quietly. Tara's lips parted in surprise. "You are bold for a human soldier." "I'm bold because she deserves better." Sarah looked between them, clutching her toy. "Can I stay here?" she asked, her voice barely audible. Rowan hesitated, caught between impulse and reason. Then he nodded. "For tonight, yeah." Tara straightened, considering him. "You would take responsibility for her safety?" "If that's what it takes." For the first time, Tara's expression softened. She touched the pendant at her throat, a symbol of her office. "You may have just started a political war, human." "Wouldn't be my first," Rowan muttered. She almost smiled. "Almost. Then I suppose we should face it together." Outside, the last light of the twin suns faded. Inside, the 3 of them sat in silence. A weary soldier, a bright blue diplomat, and a small girl with a broken toy. And for a brief, impossible moment, it felt like peace. The next morning began with the hum of a transport engine passing overhead and the faint scent of dust in the air. Rowan stirred awake, disoriented for a moment until he noticed a small shape curled up on the cot beside him. Sarah was still asleep, one hand clutching her stuffed toy and the other hanging off the edge of the blanket. For a second, she looked like any other child. Then he saw the pale blue glow of her skin and remembered everything. He ran a hand through his hair and sat up slowly, feeling every old ache that war had left behind. He hadn't meant to get involved. All he wanted was rest, quiet, a place where no one expected anything of him. But there she was, a child who had nowhere to go and no one left to care. There wasn't much rest to be had in a galaxy like that. A quiet knock came at the door. Rowan rose carefully, making sure not to wake Sarah, and opened it. Tara stood there again, looking as composed as she had the night before, though faint shadows marked the space under her eyes. In the daylight, her features were even sharper. The smooth gleam of her blue skin, the silver filigree running along her temples, the long braid that fell over one shoulder like a streak of light. She carried a small case under one arm, and a faint expression that looked like she was bracing for an argument. "Good morning, Captain," she said. "May I come in?" Rowan stepped aside. "You already know the answer to that." She entered, her eyes moving briefly to the sleeping child. "I spoke with the council early this morning. They are aware of the situation. And they demand Sarah be transferred to official custody immediately." Her voice was even, but there was a flicker of frustration beneath it. "I tried to argue that such a transfer could re-traumatize her, given the circumstances. They dismissed my concerns." Rowan rubbed his jaw. "Figures. Bureaucrats never saw a problem they couldn't make worse." Tara set the case down on his table and folded her arms. "I am risking my position by being here, human. Don't mistake my patience for apathy. Didn't say you were apathetic, just used to losing arguments." Her eyes narrowed for half a heartbeat, but then she exhaled, almost amused. "Your insolence is remarkable. How have you survived in a military hierarchy? By ducking when it counted." He glanced towards Sarah, who was beginning to stir. "So what do you suggest we do?" Tara hesitated. For someone trained in diplomacy, her silence was telling. "I could request an emergency guardianship deferment, a temporary measure pending review, but it must be filed within 12 hours and signed by both species representatives, meaning they need a human official to back it. Yes. Good luck finding one who will touch an alien case this far out." Her silver gaze met his. "Then we improvise." Sarah's soft voice broke through the tension. "Are we leaving?" she asked sleepily, rubbing her eyes. "Not yet," Rowan said, forcing a smile. "You hungry?" She nodded. He set to work heating another ration pack, pretending not to notice the way Tara was watching him, curious, analytical, almost disbelieving. When he handed the plate to Sarah, she murmured a quiet thank you and began eating with small, careful bites. "You care for her as though she were your own," Tara said softly. It wasn't an accusation, just an observation. She needed help. "That's all. That is never all," Tara replied. "Every choice carries weight. And this one," she stopped as if deciding how much to say. "You must understand that your actions here challenge the boundaries of both our worlds. Then maybe those boundaries deserve to be challenged." For a moment, they stood in silence, two weary souls from different sides of history, bound together by the same stubborn instinct to protect what was right in front of them. Later, when Sarah was dressed and sitting quietly by the table drawing shapes on the condensation of her water cup, Tara opened her case. Inside were sleek metallic tablets marked with alien symbols that shifted faintly under light. "These are identity archives," she explained. "Every citizen and child of Vereth is recorded here. If we can locate Sarah's file, we may find her lineage, perhaps even someone willing to take her in legally." Rowan nodded. "Sounds reasonable?" "Except that her file has been locked. Restricted access, classified under Code R." "What does that mean?" "It means someone doesn't want her found." The soldier in him stirred awake again. He leaned over the table, canning the alien script reflected in the tablet's glow. "You can bypass it?" Tara hesitated, then nodded. "I can. But if I do, it will alert the Council's data monitors. They will know I violated protocol, and if you don't, they will take her tomorrow." He thought for a long moment, then looked at her. "You already knew what you were going to do when you came here, didn't you?" Tara's eyes flickered. "Perhaps, but I was hoping you would tell me not to." "Yeah, well, you picked the wrong human for that." Her fingers began moving over the tablet, the symbols rippling like water as lines of alien code unfolded. The air filled with a soft hum. Rowan watched, impressed despite himself. She worked quickly, efficiently, her eyes reflecting data streams like molten silver. Finally, the screen steadied, and a file appeared. Sarah Vale, orphan designation pending. Genetic lineage, mixed heritage. Mother deceased. Father, restricted file. Mixed heritage, Rowan said. You mean human and Verethi? Tara nodded slowly, her face tightening. It is rare and highly controversial. Such children are considered anomalies by the council. So her stepmother wasn't just cruel, she was covering something up, yes. And if this becomes public, Sarah would not only lose her rights, but be classified as non-citizen. No protection under either law. Rowan exhaled through his nose. Then we don't make it public. Easier said than done. The council's scanners detect anomalies automatically during any custody transfer. If they process her, they will know, then we don't let them process her. Tara looked up sharply. What are you suggesting? We hide her. Just until we can figure something else out. You are talking about breaking Verethi law. And you're still sitting here listening. Her gaze lingered on him, unreadable. You have no idea the danger you invite. Lady, I spent 8 years fighting people who shot at me with plasma rifles. Paperwork doesn't scare me. That earned him the smallest smirk. You truly are insufferable. I've been told that before. The tension between them shifted, not softened exactly, but deepened, like gravity drawing two opposing stars into orbit. Sarah looked up at them, oblivious to the unspoken conversation hanging in the air, and smiled faintly. You sound like friends, she said. Rowan chuckled. Something like that. Tyra closed the tablet. If we are to hide her, we must move quickly. The council will send inspectors by noon tomorrow. I have contacts in the inner city, sympathizers who can shelter her temporarily. You trust them? I trust that they despise the council more than they fear me. Good enough. Rowan grabbed his jacket and slung his rifle over his shoulder. Then let's move before anyone notices. They slipped into the dusty streets as dawn broke fully over the horizon. Outpost 11 was waking, vendors lifting shutters, workers trudging toward the refineries, the faint metallic tang of engine oil in the air. To most, Rowan and Tara were just another human escort pair, a soldier guiding a government envoy. No one paid attention to the small blue child walking between them, wrapped in an oversized coat. But as they moved deeper into the settlement, Rowan caught the looks, subtle, cautious glances from alien bystanders who recognized Tyra, and from humans who saw a uniform they didn't quite trust. Suspicion everywhere. The war might have ended, but peace hadn't arrived. They passed through a narrow street lined with old freight containers converted into shops. A merchant called out an offer in mixed language. Tara ignored him, her pace quickening. When they reached the far end, she led them down a side passage between two weathered stone buildings until they stopped before a metal door marked with old script. This is it, she whispered. Rowan rested a hand on the grip of his rifle by instinct. Tara pressed her palm against the door panel. After a brief hum, it unlocked. The interior smelled faintly of ozone and machine oil. Lights flickered on, revealing a workshop filled with components, spare parts, and a woman bent over a mechanical drone. She looked up, her bright blue face streaked with grease. Tara Vale. Haven't seen you since the reforms failed. Good to see you too, Karen, Tara replied. We need your help. Karen wiped her hands and eyed Rowan suspiciously. And the human? He's the reason the child is still alive. The engineer's gaze softened as she noticed Sarah. Stars, she murmured. She's bright. Haven't seen skin that clear since before the war. Rowan frowned. You talk like that's rare. It is, Karen said simply. Bright blue children were considered omens once, a symbol of change. That made them targets when the purges started. Tara flinched. Enough! We don't speak of that here. Karen studied her for a long moment before nodding. All right, the safe room's below. She can stay there, but not for long. If the council scans for her, I won't be able to block them forever. We just need a day, Tara said. A day to make this right. Rowan glanced at her. You got a plan for that? I'm working on it. He couldn't help but smile. Of course you are. As Sarah climbed down into the hidden chamber, her tiny hand still gripping her stuffed toy. Rowan felt the unease of a soldier who knew this was only the calm before the next battle. The workshop lights dimmed as Karen sealed the upper hatch behind them, muting the faint hum of the street above. The air underground was cooler, tinged with the metallic scent of old machines and ozone filters. Sarah looked around the small space, a single cot, a shelf with tools and old data drives, and a low ceiling of riveted steel, and clutched her stuffed toy against her chest. Rowan crouched beside her, meeting her wide gray eyes. "It's just for a little while," he said. "You'll be safe here." "Will you come back?" she asked. "Yeah, you got my word." Tara knelt too, placing a gentle hand on the girl's shoulder. The gesture seemed to steady Sarah more than any promise could. The woman's voice softened, losing the official precision she used in public. "Stay quiet, little one. If anyone comes, don't make a sound. I'll know when it's safe again." Sarah nodded solemnly and then crawled onto the cot, her toy tucked under her chin. Within minutes, her breathing slowed into sleep. Rowan straightened, glancing at Tara. "You're sure she'll be all right?" "Karen's security systems are some of the best on Verith," Tara replied quietly. "But we can't stay long. Once the council realizes I accessed restricted files, they'll trace the data breach here." Rowan's instincts flared. "Then we move fast." "What's the next step?" Tara hesitated, as if weighing how much to tell him. "If we can prove that Sarah's stepmother fabricated her guardianship claim, the council will have no grounds to take her, but that requires evidence. Records from the outer registry, where all family bonds are logged. The problem is the registry lies within the capital precinct, under constant surveillance." "So we break in," Rowan said, his tone almost casual. Her brows lifted. "You make it sound simple." "Compared to the war, it is." He checked the charge on his sidearm, the movement automatic. "You got a map?" Karen descended the ladder then, overhearing just enough to scowl. "Tell me you're not planning what I think you are." Tara met her gaze evenly. "If we don't retrieve those records, the council will erase the girl's identity." "This is the only way," Karen groaned under her breath and opened a drawer full of data pads. "Then you'll need clearance codes and access to the inner gates. I still know a few people inside the network, not loyalists, but survivors. They might help if they owe me enough." Rowan leaned against the wall, watching her with new respect. "You talk like you've done this before." "Once or twice," Karen said dryly, tapping commands into one of the devices. "Before you humans ever landed here, some of us were already breaking laws for the right reasons." Tara accepted the pad, scanning the coordinates as they loaded. "We'll need a transport. One that won't be flagged." Karen pointed toward the far corner of the workshop, where a partially dismantled skimmer went under a tarp. "That one still runs, though it complains about it. Low profile, quiet engine, fake registry tag." "That'll do," Rowan said. Tara hesitated at the hatch ladder, glancing back once more towards Sarah. For the briefest moment, her composure cracked. The diplomat became something else, something almost maternal. Then she turned away and climbed up, her cloak brushing the metal rungs. Rowan followed close behind. The streets above were crowded by midday, the sun casting fractured light through the narrow alleys. The skimmer started with a low hum, gliding through the market traffic as Tara navigated the controls. Rowan watched the settlement blur past, a patchwork of human and alien architecture, banners of both empires hanging in cautious coexistence. He noticed the soldiers too, Vorethi enforcers in polished armor scanning the crowd. Their silver-tipped staffs gleamed like warning signs. "You sure this route won't get us flagged?" he asked. "Only if you stop staring at every patrol," she said without looking at him. He smirked, force of habit. "You humans are all habit and impulse. You say that like it's a bad thing." Her mouth twitched. "It's unpredictable. My people find unpredictability exhausting." "Yeah, well, it wins wars." Tara gave him a sidelong glance. "And loses civilizations." The air between them thickened for a moment before easing again into silence. They crossed the outer checkpoints without incident, the forged ID flashing a green signal. Rowan didn't exhale until they were past the last gate. The capital loomed ahead, a city of blue and white spires carved into the cliffs, its towers threaded with glowing conduits that pulsed like veins. Rowan had fought near here once. Back then it had been smoke and rubble, the sky full of ships. Now it looked pristine, but the memory of that other view clung to him like ash. Tara parked the skimmer in a shaded alcove near the lower district and adjusted her cloak to conceal her rank insignia. "The registry lies beyond the administrative square," she said, "but access requires biometric verification." "Meaning?" "We need someone who already has clearance." Rowan scanned the street. "Got anyone in mind?" She hesitated. "There is one. My mentor, Counselor Varan. He taught me everything I know about interspecies law. He still holds influence if he can be persuaded. Or bribed." "He cannot be bribed." "Then let's hope he likes you." They entered the administrative quarter through a back walkway lined with white stone pillars. Tara's movements were confident, but Rowan could sense her tension in the way her shoulders stiffened every time a drone passed overhead. Inside the council hall, the marble floors reflected blue light from above, casting shifting patterns like underwater ripples. They approached a door guarded by 2 enforcers. When Tara stepped forward, one raised his staff. "State your purpose." "I am here to see Counselor Varan," she said calmly, producing a thin hollow seal from her cloak. The guard scanned it, frowned, then gestured her through. "Proceed." His eyes flicked to Rowan. "The human stays. He's with me." "That is irregular." "So is today," she said, and swept past before they could argue. The chamber beyond was circular, lined with high bookshelves and data scrolls. At the center stood an older Varethi male with deep cerulean skin, his silver eyes sharp despite his age. He turned as they entered, his expression softening slightly at the sight of Tara. "Tara Vale, I wondered when your defiance would bring you to my door." "You taught me to defy injustice," she said, bowing lightly, "and I have found plenty of it." Varan studied her companion, his gaze unreadable. "And you bring a human soldier into the heart of the council?" "Bold, foolish, perhaps both." "He saved a child's life," Tara said, "and he needs your help as much as I do." Varan's brows furrowed. "A child?" "A girl, abandoned, mixed lineage. The council has already classified her as non-citizen. We have reason to believe her guardianship was falsified." The older alien's expression darkened. "You realize what you are asking of me. To challenge a decree is to invite exile. Then I will face it with you," Tara said. Her tone was steady, but her eyes betrayed the faint tremor of fear beneath a conviction. Varan regarded her in silence for a long moment. Then he looked at Rowan. "And you, human, what drives you in this?" Rowan met his gaze. "The same thing that drives anyone worth a damn. A kid needed help. I was there." "That's it." Varan exhaled slowly, almost smiling. "Honest. Uncomplicated." How rare. He moved to a console embedded in the wall and entered a series of commands. A soft chime filled the room. "There. You now have access to the registry for 1 cycle. No more. I cannot protect you beyond that." "That's all we need," Tara said. Varan touched her arm briefly, a gesture somewhere between affection and farewell. "Be careful, my student. The council watches everything." As they left the hall, Rowan could see the weight of what they were doing settling on Tara's shoulders. He wanted to say something reassuring, but the words stuck. Instead, he walked beside her through the echoing corridors, their footsteps the only sound. When they reached the registry wing, she paused. The door shimmered with layers of security fields. "One wrong code and the alarms trigger," she said quietly. "Then don't make a mistake." She shot him a look, but it was half amusement this time. Her fingers moved quickly, entering the authorization. The field dissipated with a soft ripple. Inside, rows of crystalline data cores lined the walls, each glowing with faint blue light. Tara approached a console and began searching the archives. After a moment, her expression changed. "Here, the guardianship file. It lists the stepmother as Nira Valethis, widow of Commander Ethan Vale. But look, the signature code doesn't match her registry mark. It's forged." Rowan leaned over her shoulder. "Can we copy it?" "Already done in Baishu." She pulled a data crystal from the terminal and slipped it into her cloak. Then her eyes widened. "They know we're here." Rowan turned as the corridor lights shifted from white to red. The alarms began to wail. The shriek of the alarm tore through the silence like a blade. Red warning lights pulsed across the polished surfaces, transforming the cool glow of the archive into a flashing storm of color. Tara froze for half a breath, her fingers hovering over the console as a mechanical voice echoed through the chamber in Varathi. Rowan couldn't translate the words, but he knew the tone. Containment protocol. He drew a sidearm. "Move," he barked. Tara didn't argue. She snatched the data crystal from the terminal and sprinted toward the exit. The sound of approaching boots echoed down the hall. "They're faster than I expected," she muttered. "They always are," Rowan replied. He took point, ducking behind a column as the first group of enforcers appeared. Blue armor, mirrored visors, rifles drawn. They hadn't expected resistance, which worked in his favor. Rowan fired once, aiming high. The stun round exploded against the wall, sending shards of crystal raining down. The aliens dove for cover, giving him time to grab Tara's wrist and drag her into a side passage. She stumbled, but kept pace. The corridor twisted downward into a maintenance tunnel, half lit and echoing with the hum of old wiring. "They'll seal the exits," Tara said. "Then we make our own," Rowan answered. He kicked open a service hatch, revealing a narrow shaft lined with conduits. The drop wasn't far, but the heat rising from below warned it led toward the lower power core. "You first," he said. "You trust me to catch you if I fall?" she asked breathlessly. "No, I trust you to land better than I would." She almost smiled as she swung into the shaft and slid down, her cloak catching light as she vanished. Rowan followed, the soles of his boots sparking briefly against the metal until he hit the ground below with a grunt. The air here was thick with eon dust. Power conduits thrummed overhead. "This way," Tara said, pointing toward a service tunnel that curved beneath the registry. They ran in near silence, save for their footsteps in the low pulse of warning sirens somewhere above. When they finally reached a junction, Tara stopped, pressing her palm to a wall panel. The section shifted, revealing a hidden alcove filled with supply crates. "Old emergency shelter," she explained. "We can breathe here." Rowan exhaled, checking the crystal she still held. "You got what we need?" "Yes, proof the guardianship was forged. But that won't be enough. It's a start." She leaned back against the wall, her composure cracking just slightly. Sweat traced faint lines down her temples. "Varan warned me the council was monitoring all archival access. I thought I'd hidden my trail." "You did fine," Rowan said. "No one expects perfection under fire." "You're too calm for someone being hunted by half a city." "I've been hunted by worse." "You always have an answer, don't you?" "Bad habit." She studied him, silver eyes catching the dim light. "You remind me of someone I met during the first negotiations. A human commander who never followed orders, yet somehow won every engagement." "That sounds like someone I'd hate." He admired chaos. "You carry it quietly." The air between them felt heavier now, charged not just with adrenaline, but something unspoken. Rowan looked away first, scanning the tunnel entrance. "We can't stay here. They'll sweep the lower levels." "There's an access route to the east corridor. Leads outside the administrative ring. Then that's where we go." They slipped back into the tunnels, moving quickly. Rowan's mind worked in practice patterns, distance, cover, timing. But another part of him, the part that wasn't soldier, was already thinking of the child hiding miles away, clutching her toy and waiting. He'd promised to come back. He'd keep that promise, even if it meant tearing through every blockade on this world. They reached the east corridor unnoticed, until the sound of marching broke the quiet. A formation of enforcers advanced from the far end, rifles raised, their visors glinting like shards of ice. Rowan shoved Tara behind a column. "Stay low." "You can't fight them all," she whispered. "Didn't say I would." He scanned the corridor, spotted a vent shaft halfway up the wall, and motioned toward it. "That's our exit." "How do you propose we reach it?" "Give me 30 seconds. Before she could argue, he stepped out from cover, weapon holstered, hands raised. The lead officer barked an order in Varathi. Rowan didn't understand it, but he recognized the motion of a trigger being squeezed. He dropped, kicked the nearest soldier's legs out from under him, and yanked his rifle free in one motion. Plasma fire filled the corridor, bolts striking stone and metal. He moved through it with cold precision. Duck, shoot, advance. The rifle's hum blended with the thrum of his heartbeat. Behind him, Tara sprinted toward the vent, her hands moving over the locking mechanism. "Almost," she hissed. Rowan covered her, firing bursts that scattered the enforcers. When she finally pried the hatch open, she shouted, "Now!" He backed toward her, still shooting. "Go," he ordered. She climbed first, graceful even under pressure, then reached down as he holstered the rifle and leapt, catching her outstretched arm. She pulled with surprising strength. They collapsed together inside the vent, gasping, the sounds of shouting fading below. The crawl space was narrow, forcing them close. Tara's breathing steadied first. "You are either fearless or reckless. Depends who you ask." She gave him a long look. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. We're not out." They crawled through the ducts until they emerged outside the Capitol ring, the afternoon light searing after the dim tunnels. The city spread beneath them in layers. Bridges, spires, ships rising like insects from docking towers. Somewhere beyond the haze was Outpost 11 and the girl waiting for them. "We need to reach Karen before sunset," Tara said. Agreed. They descended a service ladder to a maintenance walkway overlooking the transport lanes. A wind gusted past, carrying the scent of ozone and sea. For a moment, they stood side by side, catching their breath. "You could have left me back there," she said quietly. "Would have been easier." Rowan glanced at her. "Never been much for easy." A flicker of emotion crossed her face, admiration, maybe, or something deeper. She turned away. "You humans burn too brightly. My people fear that maybe they should try it sometime." Maybe. They walked until they reached an abandoned hover station at the city's edge. Tara accessed an old control console, rerouting a maintenance pod. The platform shuddered as the small craft arrived, paint faded and hull dented. "Still works," she said. "Mostly." Rowan climbed into the pilot's seat. "Then let's not wait for it to change its mind." The pod lifted, drifting away from the city's glow. Behind them, the alarms faded into silence, but the shadow of pursuit remained. Rowan flew low, hugging the canyon ridges until the capital was just a distant shimmer. Tara watched the horizon, her hands clasped loosely in her lap. "You know," she said after a while, "if we survive this, the council will call me a traitor. Then we'll make sure you survive it anyway. And you, when the Alliance hears you've interfered in Verethi law, they'll do worse than scold you. I'm retired. They'll have to get in line." She laughed softly, the first real laugh he'd heard from her. "You are impossible." "So I've been told." The pod crossed into the desert plains. Night was beginning to fall again, the twin suns sinking below the horizon. Ahead, faint lights marked the distant outline of Outpost 11. Rowan gripped the controls tighter, feeling the weight of what they carried. A child's future, proof of corruption, the fragile thread of trust between two worlds. "We're not done yet," he said. "No," Tara agreed, "but we might just have a chance." By the time the maintenance pod reached the outskirts of Outpost 11, the desert night had cooled to a thin chill. The stars above were sharp and endless, reflected in the faint glimmer of the sands below. Rowan guided the craft low across the ridge before setting it down behind an old communication tower, long since buried in dust. The engines powered down with a soft whine, leaving only the sound of wind against metal. Tara sat in silence beside him, her hands still resting on her knees, her silver eyes fixed on the horizon. Rowan noticed the tension in her shoulders and the way her breathing hadn't quite slowed since the escape. "You can relax now," he said quietly. "No one followed us." "You don't know that," she replied, voice calm but distant. "The council has long eyes. If they traced our departure through the transport logs, then they'll find an empty workshop and an angry mechanic," Rowan said. "We'll move again before sunrise." Tara finally looked at him, her expression caught between exasperation and gratitude. "You are either overconfident or deliberately reckless." "Both, probably," he admitted, stepping out onto the sand. "But I've survived this long doing exactly that." She followed him out, her cloak catching in the wind, the bioluminescent threads faintly glowing along its edges. In the darkness, she looked otherworldly, like the stories soldiers used to whisper about angels that walk through plasma fire. Rowan shook the thought away and started toward the settlement lights in the distance. Come on, we should check on Sarah. The walk back was slow, careful. Patrol drones moved along the settlement perimeter in lazy arcs, their sensor beams cutting through the dark. Rowan led them through the shadowed remains of an old supply route, ducking behind ruined walls when necessary. When they reached Karen's workshop, the air smelled faintly of heated circuitry and oil. The door opened at their knock, and the engineer appeared, her face smudged and tired. "You're back," she said. "I was starting to think you'd been turned into dust." "Almost," Rowan said, stepping inside. "We got what we needed." Karen glanced at Tara. "You actually broke into the registry?" "We did what was necessary," Tara said evenly. "Where is the child?" Karen nodded toward the stairwell. "Safe, sleeping. She wouldn't close her eyes until I told her you'd return." The faint tightness in Tara's posture eased. She descended the steps first, the low light of the underground room illuminating her profile. Sarah sat awake on the queen, her toy in her lap, eyes bright when she saw them. "You came back," she said softly. "Told you I would," Rowan said, crouching beside her. "You doing okay, kid?" She nodded but looked past him to Tara. "You look tired." Tara smiled faintly. "We both are. But we brought something important. Proof that what happened to you wasn't your fault." "What will they do now?" Sarah asked. "They'll try to take it back," Rowan said before Tara could answer. "But they won't win." Sarah's gaze flicked between them. "Are we in trouble?" "Only if we stop moving," Rowan said. Tara gave him a look but didn't contradict it. They spent the next hour reviewing the data from the crystal. The evidence was clear. Nira Valeth had falsified every record, manipulating the guardianship protocols to inherit her late husband's assets and cast off the child who complicated her standing. The political implications were immense. "If we release this," Karen said, scrolling through the file, "the council will have to respond publicly, but they'll also move to silence whoever exposed it." "Which is why we don't release it from here," Tara said. "The signal relays are monitored." "We'll need to transmit it through neutral channels." "You mean human ones," Rowan said. She nodded. "The Alliance satellite grid still passes over this hemisphere. If we can reach the uplink array at Sector 9, we can send the data through Terran relays. The Council will detect the transmission, but not its origin in time to stop it." "Sector 9's 200 clicks east," Rowan said. "Desert terrain, abandoned colonies, and no roads worth using. We'll need a transport," Karen crossed her arms. "You'll need more than that. You'll need to survive the trip. That stretches crawling with scavengers." Rowan smiled faintly. "I've met worse company." He looked at Tara. "We moved before dawn." She nodded, though the flicker in her eyes betrayed worry. When Sarah finally fell asleep again, Tara lingered by the cot, watching her small chest rise and fall. Rowan stood a few feet away, his voice low. "You care about her." "Of course I do. She's innocent, a child caught between worlds that never wanted her." "That makes two of us," he said quietly. Tara turned to him, puzzled. "You? The war didn't end cleanly, diplomat. Most of us came home to nothing. The galaxy moved on without us." Her gaze softened. "And yet you still fight." "Someone has to." She studied him for a long moment. "Perhaps your kind and mine are not so different after all." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy with unspoken things neither dared name. Eventually, Rowan broke it. "You should get some rest. We leave in 3 hours. And you?" "I'll keep watch." "You always keep watch, don't you?" "Habit." He smiled faintly. "Bad one." She almost smiled back but turned instead, her cloak whispering softly as she moved to sit near the cot. Rowan leaned against the wall, listening to the faint hum of the power core and the occasional breath of wind against the metal above. Outside, the world slept uneasily. Inside, 3 lives waited for sunrise. When dawn came, the first light crept through the slats of the workshop roof, painting stripes across the floor. Karen handed them 2 ration packs, a flask of coolant water, and a portable tracker. "You'll want to avoid the old refinery route," she said. "It's unstable. Use the ridge path. It's slower, but no scanners." Rowan loaded their supplies into the small crawler parked out back. The machine looked ancient but sturdy, its surface mottled with rust and sand. Sarah climbed aboard first, her excitement barely contained. Does it go fast? Fast enough, Rowan said. Tara took the co-pilot seat, adjusting the navigation display. If we leave now, we can reach the sector by nightfall. Rowan started the engine, the low rumble vibrating through the hull. Then let's move. The crawler rolled out into the open dunes. Behind them, the workshop faded into the shimmering distance. Ahead lay a sea of sand and silence. The suns climbed higher and the horizon began to blur, but the small shape of the vehicle kept moving. Steady, defiant, carrying a soldier, a diplomat, and a child who represented the fragile hope of something better. The crawler hummed across the dunes through the pale morning light, its treads cutting lines in the sand that the wind quickly began to erase. Sarah leaned against the window, her small hand tracing shapes on the glass, watching the endless desert flow by like a slow golden river. Tara sat beside her, silent but alert, every so often glancing at the navigation screen. Rowan kept his eyes on the horizon, the soldier in him counting distances, scanning for movement. They had been traveling for hours without incident, but peace never lasted long on this world. The first sign of trouble came with a faint shimmer in the distance, a mirage at first glance. But as they drew closer, the outlines hardened into vehicles. 3 of them, armored transports painted in the dull gray of the Varethi Council Guard. Rowan cursed softly and downshifted the crawler into a lower gear. Tara looked up sharply. They found us. Looks like it. He veered off the ridge, steering them into a canyon where the wind carved the walls into pale spirals. The crawler's engine roared as he pushed it faster. Hold on tight. The guards followed, their engines echoing off the canyon walls. Plasma fire streaked through the air, splintering stone near the rear of the crawler. Sarah screamed and ducked, covering her head. Rowan gritted his teeth, swerving around a rock spire. Tara leaned forward, her fingers flying over the console. There's an outflow passage ahead. It leads toward the uplink array. That our exit? If we survive the next 3 minutes. The canyon narrowed. Dust choked the air. Rowan took the crawler into a sharp turn that nearly tipped it on its side, then straightened as another plasma bolt hit the sand beside them. The ground shuddered. One of the pursuing transports clipped a boulder and rolled, vanishing in a plume of smoke. 2 left. He slammed the throttle forward. The canyon walls opened suddenly onto a plateau where the wreckage of an old human satellite station jutted from the sand like the bones of a giant. The uplink tower stood at its center, rusted but intact, its dish tilted toward the sky. Rowan skidded to a stop beside it. Tara jumped out before the crawler had fully halted, clutching the data crystal. "Keep them off me," she shouted. Rowan nodded, grabbing his rifle and taking cover behind the crawler. The guards' transports roared onto the plateau, soldiers dismounting with weapons drawn. Plasma bolts tore through the air. Rowan returned fire in controlled bursts, each shot sending ripples through the dust. The smell of ionized air filled his lungs. Tara sprinted toward the uplink control panel, forcing open a rusted hatch. Sparks flew as she connected the transmission node. The old machine coughed to life, its internal lights flickering weakly. She inserted the crystal and began uploading the data. Sarah crouched inside the crawler, trembling, but her eyes followed Tara with fierce focus, as if understanding that what the alien woman was doing mattered more than anything else in the universe. Rowan reloaded, then ducked as a plasma bolt grazed the crawler's hull. He risked a glance over the edge. "Tara, how long?" 2 minutes. "We don't have 2 minutes." He fired again, dropping another soldier. The second transport swung wide, attempting to flank them. Rowan saw movement in his peripheral vision, a glint of metal, a shadow rising from behind a rock. He pivoted and shot, his round striking the exposed vent of a plasma rifle. The weapon exploded, taking its wielder down with it. He could feel the heat against his skin, the old instincts sharpening every breath. But there were too many. Tara's voice came through the wind. "Transmission complete." She pulled the crystal free and turned, just as a blast struck the base of the uplink tower, hurling her backward. Rowan was already moving, sprinting across the sand. The world slowed to a blur, the hiss of energy, the rising cry of the wind, the sight of her crumpled figure near the tower's base. He reached her, dropping to his knees. She was conscious but dazed, her cloak torn, one side scorched from the blast. The air smelled of burned ozone. "You okay?" he demanded. She winced, her voice faint. The data, it's gone through. They can't bury it now. Good, he said, hauling her upright. Behind them, the last of the soldiers regrouped, their commander shouting orders. Rowan fired twice more, then threw the rifle aside when its power cell died. We need to move. Tara shook her head. Go. Take the child. I'll delay them. Not happening. Rowan, I said not happening. He lifted her over his shoulder and ran toward the crawler. Plasma bolts whistled past, one grazing his arm. Pain flared white-hot, but he didn't slow. Sarah was standing in the open hatch, crying, calling his name. He reached her, pushed Tara inside, and jumped in after. The crawler roared to life again, sand spraying as it lurched forward. Behind them, the guards fired wildly, their shots fading as distance grew. For several long minutes, none of them spoke. Only the sound of the engine and Sarah's sobs filled the air. Then Tara stirred. The transmission. It went through, Rowan said. You did it. She looked out the window at the receding horizon, her eyes distant. Then it's over. For them, maybe, Rowan said, but not for her. He glanced at Sarah. The child had stopped crying, her expression solemn, older somehow. What will happen now? She asked softly. Tara reached for her hand. The council will have no choice but to revoke the false guardianship. You will be free. The truth is in the open. Sarah looked up at her. Can I stay with you? Tara hesitated, emotion flickering across her face. She glanced at Rowan. If you wish it, she said. Rowan nodded once. She deserves a real family. Both of you do. The crawler continued across the endless plain until the desert gave way to soft hills and the sky deepened toward evening. By the time they reached the outskirts of the next settlement, the first lights of dusk were flickering on the horizon. They stopped near a ridge overlooking the valley below. For a while, none of them spoke. The wind carried the scent of sand and distance. Tara leaned against the crawler's frame, her skin glowing faintly in the twilight. I was taught that humans fought only for conquest, she said. That compassion was a disguise for hunger. And now, Rowan asked? Now I know it's a choice. And you chose differently. He smiled faintly. Guess we both did. Sarah climbed onto the step beside them, her small blue hand slipping into his larger one. What will you do now, Captain? She asked. Rest, maybe, he said, or try to. She looked between him and Tara. We can rest together. Tara laughed softly, the sound like glass chiming. Rowan glanced at her, the corner of his mouth tilting upward. Yeah, he said quietly. Maybe we can. The three of them stood there as the twin suns sank below the horizon, their light fading into silver and violet. Somewhere far above, the Terran satellites caught the transmitted signal and carried it across the stars, spreading truth faster than any army ever could. For the first time in years, Rowan felt the weight in his chest ease. He had come to this world to escape war, to find peace in silence, but instead he had found something harder to define. Connection, belonging, purpose reborn in the smallest of acts. As the night settled and the first stars ignited above, he finally sat down in the sand, Sarah nestled at his side, Tara watching the horizon with that same quiet strength. The desert wind passed over them, carrying with it the faint echo of everything they had survived. And for once, Rowan let himself believe that peace, real peace, might not be such an impossible thing after all.